Not really. I'm really concerned for our country. We have a great country. We have a radical left group of lunatics out there, just absolute lunatics, and we're going to get that problem solved. I'm only concerned for the country. Yeah.
So that's pretty ominous. That is Donald Trump having a short de facto presser at Chopper Talk, where he takes questions from reporters either leaving or going to the presidential helicopter, in which he says that we have a radical left lunatic problem and he's going to solve that problem. That is pretty ominous, especially as we see Trump continue to escalate more aggressive applications of executive power, like sending in the National Guard and ICE and U.S. Marines to various cities across this country over the objection of state and local leaders. So who the hell knows what that means? But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, this obviously comes in the aftermath of the brutal assassination of Charlie Kirk, who was a top political ally of Donald Trump's, and apparently they were close friends. To the extent that Donald Trump is not a sociopath, and to the extent that he has affection for people, I have no doubt that he had some affection for Charlie Kirk. He gave a speech last night from the Oval Office, a public address that we have covered twice, first the initial video and then the reaction to it, in which he, again, instead of using this as an opportunity to try to unite the country, to condemn political violence from the left against the right, but also from the right against the left, and say, okay, listen, let's walk back from the brink. He instead used it as an opportunity to just viciously attack the left, liberals, progressives, Democrats. He, during a list of acts of political violence, deliberately omitted the many instances, the many high-profile instances in recent history of political violence against the left by the right. And so he just failed to meet the moment. And he did it predictably, right? Because he's not a uniter. So what the hell does he mean by you're going to solve the problem? It seems extremely ominous given the various contexts. And people are concerned, of course, that this could be used, that Kirk's assassination could be used as a pretext for Trump to try to crack down on the Democratic Party. And as I've discussed in a separate video, which you will probably see later, I recorded it first, but you'll probably see it later. There are many prominent supporters, both in and out of office, both in power and with power, who are publicly supporting Trump doing just that. Use this as an opportunity to crush the left, crush the Democratic Party. We'll see. I will say, to give the devil his due, one thing that I was pleased to hear from Donald Trump was when he was asked about his supporters and how they should respond, given that Charlie Kirk, they say, was an advocate for nonviolence. Listen to his answer.
Charlie Kirk was a big advocate of nonviolence and free speech on campus. How do you want your supporters to respond, sir?
I think that way. He was an advocate of nonviolence. That's the way I'd like to see people respond.
That's encouraging. More of that, please, Mr. President. More of that, please. Going out and trying to lower temperature, not just on the left, which if you feel the temperature is pretty hot on the left, fair enough, but the temperature is pretty hot on the right too. And all it takes is, again, one maniac on either side to further escalate this. So obviously you got to balance out what Trump just said against the body of all the rhetoric that he puts out on a regular basis, but that was encouraging, and I hope he doubles down more on that. But again, he's also talking about solving the issue of the radical left. Again, remains to be seen. A couple of other clips I want to play, starting with this one.
What's your reaction to Russian drone incursion into Poland?
Could have been a mistake. But regardless, I'm not happy about anything having to do with that whole situation.
So Trump keeps saying that with respect to Russia's war in Ukraine. He's not happy. We didn't get, again, we focus pretty much on domestic policy here, so we didn't get a chance to talk about it. But since we're covering a Trump presser to provide some context, Russian drones were struck down over Poland by Poland. And I think right now, I think I saw a headline that France is actually sending military assets into Poland to help them protect themselves from any further incursion by Russian drones or Russian machinery. Just real quick, this is what CNN has to say. After Russian drones were downed in Poland, what does triggering NATO Article 4 mean? Because, of course, Poland is part of NATO, right? And there's this military assurance pact where, like, hey, you attack. Like, for example, Article 4 was what was invoked I think it was Article 4. It was Article 4 or Article 5. Ah, now I'm blanking on my trivia. When the United States was attacked by Al-Qaeda during 9/11, there's a reason the coalition, the Allied coalition, came to our defense as a consequence of NATO. But let's take a look at this. Poland has triggered Article 4 of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO, after the country reported 19 breaches of its airspace by Russian drones on Wednesday. NATO fighter jets struck down multiple Russian drones that violated Polish airspace during an attack on neighboring Ukraine, marking the first time that shots were fired by the alliance since the start of the war in Ukraine. A total of 16 drones were found scattered throughout the country, Poland's interior ministry said later on Wednesday. Now, NATO allies have formally discussed the situation, which Polish officials have called a Russian provocation. Here's what you need to know about Article 4. What is Article 4? The Transatlantic Defense Alliance employs the principle that an attack on one is an attack on all. Article 4 of its treaty states that any member country can formally bring an issue to the attention of NATO's principal decision-making body, the North Atlantic Council, to meet and discuss steps with its allies. Okay, so Article 5 is what I was thinking of. There we go. Yeah, should not be confused with Article 5, the cornerstone of the alliance, which states that an armed attack on one NATO ally will be considered an act of violence against all members and prompt assistance to the members concerned. So that is what is being discussed there, what Russia sending drones into Poland, Trump says might have been a mistake, but nevertheless, they did violate Poland's sovereign airspace. One last clip, and this one is of particular interest to me and should be particular interest to you, and it's a sign of actual foreign policy, global good news. Here's Donald Trump being asked about the conviction of Jair Bolsonaro by the Brazilian Supreme Court.
President, in Brazil, Bolsonaro was just found guilty by the Supreme Court. You've been very clear that you would apply sanctions. Are you thinking further sanctions to Brazil because of this Bolsonaro?
Well, I watched that trial. I know him pretty well. Foreign leader. I thought he was a good president of Brazil. And it's very surprising that that could happen. That's very much like they tried to do with me, but they didn't get away with it at all. But I can only say this. I knew him as president of Brazil. He was a good man, and I don't see that happening.
So, Trump and Bolsonaro were quite close. They actually referred to Bolsonaro as the Trump of the tropics, and that was pretty prescient because not only basically he used populist rhetoric, he was a right-wing authoritarian, and like Trump, he tried to cling to power, okay? You may recall, I think it was, I know it's 2023, and I'm pretty sure it was January 8th, 2023. So like, 2 years rather, and 2 years and 1 day, or 2 years and 3 days, I think, from the January 6th insurrection here in the United States, Bolsonaro supporters attacked the capital of Brazil, okay? Then that's relevant to this and what Bolsonaro attempted to do before. So let's take a look. Brazil's Supreme Court is on course to convict Bolsonaro in coup plot. A majority of voting justices said they plan to vote to convict Brazil's former president of trying to hold the power. A final verdict could come Thursday. Brazil's Supreme Court on Thursday moved toward convicting former President Jair Bolsonaro of plotting to stage a coup after 3 of the 5 justices presiding over his trial said that he had conspired to cling to office after losing the 2022 election. Bolsonaro has been accused of overseeing a vast conspiracy that prosecutors say included plans to overturn the vote and assassinate the election's winner, Luiz Lula da Silva, also known as Lula, before he took office as president. Bolsonaro denies planning a coup or plotting to kill his rival, but admits to studying, quote, ways within the Constitution to remain in office after losing an election he claimed had been stolen from him. This marks a crucial moment in a months-long trial that has tested Latin America's largest democracy, dominated headlines at home and abroad, and cast doubt over the legal and political future of Brazil's most powerful right-wing figure. Still, the verdict will not be final until all 5 justices have voted and the court declares an official verdict, which could come as early as Thursday afternoon. Bolsonaro could face more than 40 years in prison. His sentencing is expected to take place by Friday. By Thursday afternoon, 3 of the 5 Supreme Court justices had voted in favor of convicting him of coup d'etat, the violent abolition of democracy, and taking part in an armed criminal organization, among other crimes. Justice Alexandre de Moraes, who is overseeing the case, opened voting this week by deciding to convict Bolsonaro on all charges and delivering a sharp rebuke to claim by Bolsonaro's defense that there had never been any conspiracy to hold on to power. But there is no doubt that was an attempted coup, he said. 2 other justices, Flavio Dino and Carmen Lucia Antunes Rocha, agreed and also cast votes to convict. At least one justice, Louise, looks like fucks, but I'm going to spell that or mispronounce that, disagreed sharply with his colleagues, voted to absolve Bolsonaro of all the charges a day earlier, arguing there was no direct evidence linking the former president to the crimes. That justice also raised questions about whether the case should have been heard by all 11 members of the Supreme Court and whether the defense had given too little time to review the evidence. Justice Moret, in a dramatic moment during the trial on Thursday, showed video footage of Bolsonaro threatening him at a rally while he was still president, and Bolsonaro's supporters storming government buildings in January 2023 in a destructive riot that echoed the attack on the U.S. Capitol 2 years earlier. Besides Bolsonaro, 7 members of his inner circle are also facing trial, accused of aiding the former president in the coup attempt. The trial, which began last week, is the final step in a sprawling investigation and court proceedings that have lasted months. In pretrial sessions, the justices have already heard testimony from dozens of people, including Bolsonaro, other defendants, and witnesses. And it goes on like this. Again, this is really important to me. This is one of the few foreign policy stories that I have returned to off and on over the past 3 years because, again, the parallels between the January 2023 insurrection and that of January 6, 2021 here in the United States are pretty disturbing. And unlike the United States, it seems that Brazil is actually robust enough as a democracy to punish its insurrectionist ex-head of state, which is really inspiring. And sad that we can't have it here, but it's nice to see that other countries are able to get it right. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.